Well, hello again from the Granite State. My name is Gary, and this is the Restoring Main Street podcast. Thank you, as always, for joining me. Gotta love it when I hiccup on the intro. Well, it's a week later. Pray that you had a safe and memorable Christmas. Got a chance to spend time with family and friends. Took all the, necessary precautions that make you feel comfortable so that you can do that. I pray, like I said, you're able to enjoy that time and make some lasting memories. So this week's podcast. Obviously, we're creeping up toward the end of the year. We've only got a couple of days left, and I was considering how do I leave 2001? What do I give as maybe an intro to the coming year? What's the best way for me to share some information with you that would be useful and leave you with something to chew on? So I came up with the idea, knowledge. Knowledge is power. And, how do we gain knowledge? Studying, watching different pieces of information on the internet, things that you feel are informative, truthful, you trust the sources. So in thinking along those lines, I honestly thought the best thing that I could do is just share with you a list of books that I've acquired that you can look up yourself. Take a look at, reference, grab copies, and like I said, knowledge is power. So that's all. That's what I wanted to share with you tonight. A list of books. I'm going to run down through them, give you a little bit about each one, but I'm going to attempt, like I always do, to not have a lengthy podcast. Like I said, I've told you many times, I am not an authority in anything. I have life experience, and that's it. So the things that I share, like I've said in the past, I expect you to go check out, look up for yourself, and that's all this list of books are actually going to be, is a suggestion. And I just I hope you'll look into some of those and gain the knowledge that I think will be helpful. Because honestly, if we're to attempt to fight back and hold on to the things that we hold dear, knowledge of those things is going to be key. So I say we start the program. And there we are. So, like I shared, I've got a list of books. When I finish this podcast, I will drop this down in the comments below so that you can have a physical hard copy of this, so you don't have to sit there and take notes. But like I said, my hope is that this provides a basis of information for you, something that you're willing to go check on, grab some copies of this material. And I've got several books here, so my expectations are what interests you, and I'm hoping many of them do. Like I said, you'll go out and acquire and do some reading on your own. Again, I am no authority on anything, nor am I going to make the claim that all of the books that I'm going to share with you that I have read yet. I am honestly notoriously slow at reading. And, if you've watched a few of these podcasts, I know that you have noticed that I can tend to stumble. Part of that is out of nerves. I'm not a professional when it comes to this stuff, but I've never been what you would call a fast reader. But don't let my shortcomings influence you as far as any of this. And I pray that you'll find this interesting. And so I've broken this down into categories. Stuff, just titles that I thought were meaningful, that would give some basis of reference from where I'm coming from or why I suggested the book. So what I wanted to start with is the idea of history. If we as a nation, as a people, do not understand the truth behind our history, and, like I said, the good and the bad, I don't pretend that we are a perfect nation, but my only objection to people that continually point out all the mistakes I've made, they use that as a way to cover up the good that this country has been able to achieve. They don't want to talk about those things anymore, and a lot of that doesn't get discussed in schools like they used to. Back when I was growing up, it just doesn't happen anymore. So that's an unfair portrayal of what this country is about, what our founding was truly about, and like I said, the mistakes and the triumphs, the achievements that we've been able to gain in this 240 some odd years that we've been in existence. So starting at the basis of honest history, I think is important. So what am I going to start with? Well, this is a book, like I said, that I had referenced back if you watch previous podcasts, with a story about the Pilgrims. This is the American story, The Beginnings. This is written by David and Tim Barton. This book will give you an honest portrayal with all kinds of references, starting at Columbus's journey here, what that entailed, and it goes through the consecutive years following right up until the actual abolishing of slavery. That's as far as this particular book goes. But you can see, I mean, it's no thin read, and well illustrated. Got a, like I said, a mountain of information in here. And David and Tim have devoted their lives to honest research about American history and compiling these things. So in talking about history and getting a decent basis that we can learn from, a good place to start, like I said, The American Story, Beginnings by David and Tim Barton. And what's next on my list of history books or references to history? The Federalist Papers. You don't get much more in depth as far as a study or a basis of how we were able to put forward a lucid foundation of reason that our founding fathers used to form this nation as far as the Constitution and our republic that we call the United States of America, if it were not for the authors, some of the authors of this particular compiling or book, the Federalist Papers. This is Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay. And like I said, this will give you a strong basis of information as far as our history, and like I said, the reasoning behind what it was that this country was trying to build, what our founding fathers were actually striving for. It's an important book, and one I wanted to share with you as far as, like I said, a place of history to start and get a basis from. And, when we're talking about history, a lot of that, a lot of the references we use besides, great stories and past events, we also look at some of the great men in American history, people that contributed so much as far as what this nation was founded on and the directions and principles that we were trying to institute and constantly just trying to make better. So I got just 3 of those particular men, and these you can find in the Dover thrift editions of books, which most of this stuff you can find on Amazon. To start out, Frederick Douglass, the great speeches of Frederick Douglass. If you want to have a good understanding of that particular time period, the opinions of a great mind, Frederick Douglass was one that had debates with Lincoln, and like I said, the discussions of the day of what this country was about, the direction it was going, and certainly if you want to have a better understanding of that, this book is an integral part of that understanding. And you can't really mention Frederick Douglass without mentioning Abraham Lincoln. This book, like I said, this is the Dover thrift editions. You can find these on Amazon, and this is the great speeches of Abraham Lincoln. There's a lot of inspirational things, obviously, that you can gain from these speeches, reading through them. And like I said, it gives you a good understanding of what the time was like, what was the thought process was going on then, and the direction of the people that were trying to mold this nation. So that's another history book that I suggest that you pick up. And Booker T. Washington, Up from Slavery. This truly gives you an understanding of how life in this early part of our nation was, especially for the American slave. And no more eloquently spoken than through the words of Booker T. Washington. And like I said, but where would you try to turn or go from there? Well, you're going to notice that a familiar author comes up again. Original Intent. This is another book written by David Barton. And it basically covers the original intent of our courts, the Constitution, and religion. Just another important piece of literature that will give you the basis of understanding. And granted, I'm reading through these. You can see that these are substantial books, and I don't have expectations that you're going to whip through any of these. I get the fact that not everyone is interested or suited reading into history, but there's an awful lot of merit there. We get into arguments and discussions in this country, and we are more divided than we ever have been. And part of that, I think, is because there's a certain amount of misconceptions about how this country was founded, what the intent behind it was, and honestly, if you're just not, if you're someone that just doesn't want to automatically take the opposing side, if you feel like you could use to have, a stronger understanding, so that, when you have a discussion or unfortunate, arguments that may ensue about some of the more important things or principles or ideas that made up this country, it's knowledge, that helps support these things. So, like I said, I would strongly suggest that you would consider, like I said, David Barton's book, Original Intent. So that's just a short list of historical reference books or material that I'm suggesting for your this upcoming year. Maybe one or two of those would pique your interest. I'm hoping that you'll look into them and read those. Certainly the Booker T. Washington and Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass books are quick reads. There's not a lot there as far as amount of material, but the content, the uplifting message, the truth behind those particular gentlemen and their words, I believe would go a long way to giving each of us just a better understanding of where this country's roots came from. And if you're talking about topics, and like I said, I broke this down into topics, so history was the first one. And the other basis for just knowledge that I feel, gives us a good direction and solid footing to stand on, has to be faith. So when you're talking about books of faith, I can't, the only place I can start is with the Holy Bible, and I don't think that needs, much of an introduction or any more explanation, but I myself just, to keep my own head on straight and try to start each day with the right perspective, I spend a little bit of time myself reading Scripture. Not a lot, but 15, 20 minutes. I try to make that a regular routine every day, and that's for my own benefit. And my prayer for myself is that, like I said, it sets me with the right frame of mind to start my day, and that's my goal. So, one of the other very important books, I feel, this is The Cost of Discipleship by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And there's probably a good portion of you that are not going to know who Dietrich Bonhoeffer is. Let me see if I can just quickly read the back of the book just to give you a better reference. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was born in, and I know I'm going to kill this, but forgive me, Breslau in 1906. That's in Germany. The son of a famous German psychiatrist. He studied in Berlin and New York City. He left the safety of America to return to Germany to continue his public repudiation of the Nazis, which they ended up finding him and arresting him for speaking out in 1943. And he was imprisoned and eventually hung on April 19th. In April, of 1945, after he was linked to the conspiracy the attempt to assassinate Hitler. So if you remember the movie not that long ago, the Tom Cruise movie, Valkyrie, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was somebody that was involved in that coup attempt to actually assassinate Hitler. And another portion of the back of this book says, one of the most important theologians of the 20th century illuminates the relationship between ourselves and the teachings of Jesus Christ. So Dietrich Bonhoeffer basically talks about what true discipleship is and what it means to start each day being humble, thinking of others, setting your mind each day in a good place. So, when you come in contact with your fellow man, even though we're going to make mistakes, perhaps starting with a good basis gives us a much better chance to make better decisions in all that we do. So again, The Cost of Discipleship by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And this one goes back a little bit. Pilgrim's Progress. It's basically a story by John Bunyan, and it chronicles an individual's life in the early part of this country with Christianity, and it's basically lays out the pitfalls and the accomplishments and lessons and personal enlightenment that's associated with a path in faith. And this is an amazing book just to give you, like I said, another good basis and point of reference for how you should conduct your own life. A very important piece of literature to consider. So, Pilgrim's Progress. And when we shift from faith, then the next question that comes to mind is, how do we approach, or where do we get knowledge and understanding of the spirit of the age that we're dealing with right now? The evil that seems to be around us and just growing in a rapid rate. How do you prepare yourself for those things? Well, again, it's in the form of knowledge. So, books to try to give you a reference for some of these things so you have a better understanding and can have a conversation with people and share your opinions. If you don't know the enemy, you're not going to be able to fight the war. So, the Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx and Frederick Engels. I don't think that needs much explanation, but like I said, if you don't understand the goals and the ideals of the enemy, how are you going to have the knowledge and the basis to fight back? So it's a thin pamphlet, but honestly, I suggest every American have one of these and read it so you understand what it is that we're fighting against. Something that's come up more recently, and a book I think everybody should own too. Critical Race Theory. Richard Delgado and Gene Stefanik, excuse me. And this is basically a culmination of the ideas, the socially polarizing and crippling ideas that somehow your skin color and not your actions and principles ultimately, determine whether you are an oppressor or the oppressed, a racist or a victim. And I think, like I said, I've seen a lot of posts online and videos of people standing up against this. But if you want a deeper understanding, like I said, knowledge is power. And if you don't know what the enemy is thinking and where they get their opinions or their, for lack of a better term, principles, I guess, you need to read some of these books. So, critical race theory. The leverage, the tool that's being used right now to try and shape the new world order, the globalists' look on what the future should be for each and every one of us. Here's another one that you should read. COVID-19, The Great Reset. This is Charles Schwab. This is the World Economic Forum. This is global elites that have basically planned out everybody's future. They've decided the way society should be run and how you should conduct your life moving forward, and this was what they're pushing for. When you hear the terms Build Back Better, when you hear that lie spoken anywhere, this is coming from Charles Schwab. And the fact that he's titled COVID-19 and the Great Reset tells you that they've been waiting. They've been waiting for a tool that they could use. Well, COVID-19 is that tool, and they're trying to use that to start to kick off the Great Reset. So you need to understand this. An important book to have and to read. And how about a book or a way, an explanation of what's happening around us, something that's more comprehensive that hopefully can explain it in a way that makes sense to all of you, because it's something I have to look at daily to even try to attempt to understand. It is so complex what's happening right now, and all the effort that is going forward, trying to reshape our thinking, to change words, to change meanings. Well, where do you get, a better understanding of what's happening and why? Well, Victor Davis Hanson has written a book, The Dying Citizen. And this is how progressive elites, tribalism, and globalization are destroying the idea of America. This is a New York Times bestseller. If you want a better understanding of how all of these things that you see happening around you that cause you to pause and say, I don't recognize my country anymore. What is happening? If you want something that will inform you, give you information, and spell out and connect some dots, The Dying Citizen, Victor Davis Hanson. So that's the spirit of the age that is, like I said, trying to reshape our society. And like I said, knowledge and understanding of the enemy is key to knowing how you can possibly push back. And one more piece of literature. This was fiction when it was written at the time. But we might question whether it's fiction anymore. 1984 by George Orwell. If you haven't read this, please read it. Or at least get a copy of the movie. Watch the movie. If you want a better understanding of what a completely government-controlled society looks like. Like I said, this was fiction when it was written. but it was written as a warning. So I would suggest that 1984 is not a bad choice for a better understanding of what's going on. And you might be a little frightened by what you read and then look around you. And unfortunately, you might recognize way too much of, like I said, what was a piece of fiction. And seems to be at least being attempted to be brought to reality. So those are some pieces of information. And then the last category that I had tossed down, and I only have a couple of references here. All the rest of that, like I said, was meant to give you a good basis moving forward, some literature, something solid you can hold in your hand and refer to, and help to get a better understanding of some of these things, and a better foundation for your belief system. So what are some other positive books that you can look at that kind of give you an illustration of why this country came into being, or why we were so successful, why our principles and ideas just helped us rise to the stature that we had. A lot of that was, the basis that we created for belief that our rights are given to us by God and individual freedoms. But this particular book, The 5,000-Year Leap, the 28 ideas that changed the world, basically shaped the direction of this country and led to its ultimate growth and success. This is a very important book as well. If you want, like I said, a better understanding of what made this country great, what the achievements were, the things that just hurled us leaps and bounds, further ahead than any other country. This gives you a good understanding of those achievements, those events, those 28 things that they've talked about in here, those great ideas that just help mold a nation. So that's another very important book. And like I said in the last of these last two were, I titled them just a path, a way to move forward, something that we can use now. Like I said, the 5,000-Year Leap gives you an understanding of, the ideas that grew this country. And then this particular one, Do What You Believe, or You Won't Be Free to Believe It Much Longer. This is written by Steve Deace, who is a best-selling author behind the Faucian Bargain, which talked about COVID and Dr. Fauci, and just gave you a lot of truthful background that pushed back against the narrative that was being pushed by the administration and the NIH, the CDC. In this particular book, I'll read the back of this. It's been over 40 years since the Christian Manifesto cast a vision for religious believers to wage the culture war. And now it's time for a new generation to arise and answer history's call in our time. And like I said, Steve writes a very comprehensive book here, and with a sense of urgency. Do what you believe, or you won't be free to believe it much longer. Unfortunately, there's a lot more truth to that than I would like to believe at this point. But I'll read the back cover quickly for you. This time, the soul of America is really at stake. Sure, for many years we have heard this language dramatically and cynically utilized during political campaigns. But this time it's actually true. American exceptionalism, faces more systemic threats and existential peril than ever before. A culture that cannot agree on what a border, citizen, criminal, law, constitution, life, or even truth is probably doesn't have long to last. But as Jesus warned in Matthew 9:37, the harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. Either we will stand boldly now for what we believe, or our way of life will be lost to the ash heap of history. Pilgrims, having undertaken the glory of God and the great awakenings, are what gave birth to liberty on this continent in the first place. And without a revival of those first things in our time, that liberty will be lost for good. This will be the generation that determines the fate of the West. This is the blueprint and battle plan for such a time as this. So again, do what you believe, or you won't be free to believe it much longer. So that was a long list of books, and like I said, I was just kind of give you a cursory explanation of them. I will copy and paste the list that I have in my notes, and my hope from sharing all of that is that you see some value there in understanding that moving ahead in this next year in 2022, that knowledge, if any of those source materials that I just shared with you is something that you haven't read, I truly believe that it's time for consideration to grab some of that self-reliance, some of that material, and give yourself some ammunition and understanding so that you can move forward in confidence and with strength. And like I stated, over the last few podcasts, my goal is to give you things and material, information that is useful and that you can utilize, that gives you the ability for action and to push back and to help preserve the things that are important to you and your family. I pray that's true in every small town and city across America. So that's my hope and my prayer, and that's why, like I said, I'm sharing that with you tonight. So to lighten things up just a little bit and move away from the basis of tonight's discussion, I just want to share with you again my friends at metalheadsrock.com. Like I said, if you want just a little bit of a respite from what's going on around you, and would like to lose yourself in a little bit of headbanging rock and roll, the stuff that makes me feel old, because they now call it, classic rock. You can find all the things that would let friends know that that's what you're into at metalheadsrock.com. They have t-shirts, they have bandanas, they have hats, they have mugs, they have jewelry. Like I've pointed out a few different times, they also have a metal shop where they produce wall hangings, and I've pointed those out a few different times to you. My logo over my shoulder here in the background of my company, First Crown Point Group, LLC. And then the beginning of this podcast, when I have the wide angle, you can see the 1776 We the People tattered flag in the background. Those are wall hangings made from our friends at metalheadsrock.com. You can visit their website, check out all that they have to offer. Like I said, they have a certain amount of flexibility with the wall hangings, and they have a lot of things to choose from. So I believe that they can probably fit any motif in any home. So I encourage you, check out my friends at metalheadsrock.com. And if you're in New Hampshire, if you're in the city of Rochester, go over to the Lilac Mall and check out their shop right there. Like I said, metalheadsrock.com. Great way to just maybe take your mind off a few other things and enjoy some good old-fashioned headbanging music, along with wearing the attire that makes you feel like you're still there at the rock concert. So, just a quick reminder as well, you can find Restoring Main Street podcast. You can find us. I'll share a link to the YouTube posting on my Facebook page at Restoring Main Street on Facebook. You can find Restoring Main Street on Gab TV. You can find us on Rumble. You can find us on BitChute. Those will get the full-length podcast. Those are not links. If you go there and you search out Restoring Main Street or RestoringMainStreetPodcast.com, Restoring Main Street at any of those platforms, Gab TV, Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, you will find yours truly and the topic for this week. So I would encourage you to check those out. I also have a presence in the audio realm. If you're just want to listen to the audio portion of any of these podcasts, you can find us on Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, Anchor FM, Breaker. There's a few others that I'll post the links to. Some in this part of the country, or maybe some of the smaller platforms, but around the world they're recognized. So I will share those other platforms where you can find the audio version of Restoring Main Street. And please write a review, hit notifications, slam the like button, notifications button, anything that would help us. Write a review, give us a 5-star review, and that would just basically help the algorithms recognize us and share our podcasts. Just get the information out there, because ultimately that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to grow our outreach and the people that get a chance to hear what it is that we're sharing here. So I also have Restoring Main Street podcast, Instagram, Twitter, and MeWe. So you can go there as well. And in closing, I always want to thank you for just taking the time to swing in and listen to the podcast. It's very much appreciated. If you have any feedback, any suggestions, please reach out. Would definitely appreciate any of that. It only helps us better focus on things and hopefully give you a better program. So that's definitely my goal. Share information and give you something to think about each week. And in that light, let me share with you the idea of God, freedom, and family. Because if we lose the first two, I truly believe our families are doomed. So, again, thank you once again for tuning in, and God bless.